before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge the ancestral, traditional, and unceded Aboriginal territories of the Coast Salish people, and in particular the Wasanic and the Lekwungen, on whose territory we live, work, and play. And my name is Joanna Fox. I'm the chair of the Fairfield Gonzales Community Association Land Use Committee, known as the CALUC, and chair of tonight's meeting. And we have tonight Owen Seifert, who is going to be helping anybody with technology problems, but it's usually fairly seamless, so we're pretty good on that respect. Don Mansour is also on from the CALUC, as is Dave Thompson and Ashley Fernandez. We always welcome members of the community to inquire about the CALUC. We're always looking for new faces and people with different backgrounds. So please, excuse me, do get a hold of us if you're interested. We definitely have some spots available, so it'd be great to hear from you. And there's a lot going on in Fairfield and Gonzales. Tonight we have two meetings. We have a preliminary meeting on 10:43 Meares, and that will be Elizabeth and David Jall. Okay, I see Liz. I'm not sure if David's on. Anyway, that will be a preliminary meeting. Preliminary meeting is they have up to 15 minutes to make their presentation. And Peter, sorry, I'm not sure who you're with, but I don't know who everybody is with. So I'm going to leave that until, because I'm sure I know there's other people who are with the different groups. So the preliminary meeting, the applicant will have 15 minutes to present. Members of the community are definitely welcome to follow along. This is not the time when questions are answered or issues are considered. That this is really merely an opportunity for them to present to us as a CALUC and as a community. So if you do have concerns or issues about anything, you can file them until the community meeting, or you can let us know by email. The following that will be, sorry, but the CALUC is allowed to ask questions. And so that will be followed by the community meeting for 1733, 1735, 1737 Fairfield Road. I understand there'll be a couple of speakers and a representative from the Land Conservancy. Again, that'll be a 15-minute presentation. And after that, members of the community can ask questions. They are asked to keep their questions to 2 minutes. Questions or considerations or comments, keep them to 2 minutes. And then the applicant can respond if it is that type of question that they can respond. And then at the end, the CALUC members will have other questions if they haven't been covered already. There will be a report on the community meeting for Fairfield Road application, and it'll be up on the Fairfield Gonzales CALUC website within a weekish, and it gets sent to the City of Victoria. And the our role as the CALUC is to facilitate communication and engagement between the community and applicants, sorry. And we will ask questions on certain aspects, including accessibility, types of heating and e-cars, that kind of thing, for environmental perspectives. So we do have a list of things that we do go through if the applicant hasn't touched on them. And we wish this to be a respectful meeting. And so we do ask people to stick to the timelines that we've given, and to also be respectful to the process of the application and to the people who are on the call. There are several things that you can do as a member of the community, and you could to stay involved with either of these applications. There are some meetings you can attend, although like the preliminary meeting, you're asked to just keep your comments to yourself at that point. It's more a sort of an information gleaning opportunity. That's the, you can attend the committee of the whole with the city when they come up. You can attend the advisory committees, such as the advisory design panel. Again, you're just there to watch the presentation. You can attend the public hearing, which tends to be towards the end of the process. And at that point, members of the public are invited to make their concerns or questions or comments heard. You can also send an email to City Council through their the email on their website. And for applications that have reached a certain point, like the one with the community meeting, where the plans will be up on the development tracker, you have a 30-day window to make comments through a comment box on the site. And basically you're asked to oppose or support and why, and you're asked for your name and your address. And all those comments get amalgamated after 30 days, and they get given to the CALUC and to the applicant and to the city, and it becomes part of the recorded comments, feedback, whatever, for the application in general. So without further ado, I would like to welcome, I'm going to go with Liz, because I can see here, I don't know if there's I'll let her just take over and tell us who's with her. And Liz, you've got 15 minutes to make your presentation.
Great. Thanks very much, Joanna, and to the rest of the committee for your time tonight. We're really excited to be here presenting our preliminary development concept for 1039 and 1043 Meares Street. I'm here with Peter Johann-Connect from Cascadia Architecture, who I think will be putting up our slide deck momentarily. Thanks, Peter.
Okay, I hope everyone can see that now. Super.
Yes. Great. So this development will be a partnership between Jol Residential and Fort Properties, two local families with a shared vision to create a development that enhances the vibrancy and fabric of this unique neighborhood while also advancing the goals of the 2019 Fairfield Neighborhood Plan. We think it's an incredible opportunity to take an underutilized surface parking lot and transition it into housing in such close proximity to services and amenities. We're also excited to be collaborating again with the wonderful team at Cascadia Architects, who we are currently working with on our Redfern Residence project in Oak Bay, and have previously worked with in Fairfield on our 986 Haywood project right across the street from Beacon Hill Park. And so we have a bunch of stuff to get through tonight. So I'll hand it over to Peter to walk.
I hope everyone can hear me. Okay, wonderful. I'm just lost my mute and unmute button here, but okay. So I'll walk you through a few slides to show you where our current thoughts are, and just to give everyone a little bit of an update on and information here, really where the site is actually located. And it is like two vacant lots that are currently used as a surface parking lot right here on Meares Street between Vancouver and Cook Street. And it's obviously very close to the downtown core with all its beauty and amenities. The neighborhood context is really informing where we are planning to go with the design and what we think is appropriate on this property. And the area is surrounded by predominantly multi-residential uses, with some commercial uses along Meares and Cook Street. And across from our site is the iconic Mosaic building, which was actually designed by John D. Castry in 1963 for the Royal Trust Company and was later converted to condos with some commercial uses along the ground floor. And then there are two 4-story apartment buildings flanking the west and the south of the site. And then also the new BC housing project, which is now under construction and will be a 6-story supportive housing project. The current existing zone is R3-1, shown right here in the center, which does actually allow up to 6 stories and an FSR of 1.6 to 1. Now, when we take a look at the official community plan and its framework, it also is envisioning for this area up to 6 stories, a higher density of up to 3 to 1, and also a height up to 20 meters. And it is really right along the boundary of the downtown core, which is like the Harris Green District, and then the Fairfield neighborhood. And as shown here in the color, taken right off the map 21 from the neighborhood plan, it is destined to be core residential. When we then take a look at the very recent neighborhood plan from late 2019, it just confirms what the OCP is envisioning, which is also a maximum height of up to 20 meters, which is 6 stories, and then a density of 1.5 to 3 to 1 FSR. And all of that is really driven by its close proximity to downtown and all the infrastructure and amenities around the neighborhood, and also the transportation network that has evolved over the years. And you can see all the various roads with Cook Street and 4th Street being quite rapid and frequent transit corridors, a much better bike network than ever before. And also these red dots show where car sharing stations are located, or a new one is actually coming very close to the site on Meares and Cook Street. So all that results in a very high transit score, Walker's Paradise score of 93, and almost perfect score of 99 for the bike community. So when we take a look at the actual site and what this means in order to place density, we took like an area what a 6-story building with an FSR of 3 to 1 would actually look like. And if we place this in the center of the site, we just also look at the adjacencies around. We have the BC housing project right here to the east. We have the Mosaic right across Meares. We also have green space to the south with the 4-story apartment buildings along the south and west. And we think because of the adjacencies, a future building should be placed closer to Meares Street. And because of the building shape and height of the BC housing project, this is the elevation right here, it's actually the exit stair fairly close to the shared property line. We feel it's also appropriate to place the building closer to the east property line and lining it up with the new neighbor to the east, which allows more space to the residences to the south and the west, and also really valuing the existing greenscape that is along those boundaries, and working with the sun, where we have visited the site a number of times. Our first office was actually right across the site in the Mosaic building. So we know this area and site very well. And you can see in this little red dot here, so like a view towards the east, which is this diagram here, is just informing us where the sun path is in the summer, in the winter, and fall and spring. So with that in mind, we continued with the idea of placing a building that actually has no underground parking, where the ground floor is half with parking behind and access off Meares Street. Driveway would be along the west. And the black dashed line above is the other floors above. So large bike rooms, a live-work unit on the ground floor, and then a mix of studios, 1 bedroom and 2 bedroom on the levels 2 to 6, with a total of approximately 50 units and an FSR that would be much below the OCP's and community plans target, which is around 2.64 to 1. The street section we wanted to share just to give you a relationship to the Mosaic building, which is right across from Meares, like I mentioned before, but also really honing in on the idea and concept of putting parking at grade behind the ground floor, and which would then be covered by the floor above, putting all the residential uses on level 2 to 6. And service spaces and bike storage and all that on the ground floor. And the biggest advantage of not having an underground parkade on this side is actually having a very little impact on the existing boundary trees along the property lines, knowing that these will be valued as a buffer between a new building and the existing buildings and the neighbors and the views and privacies and just the value of greenscape. There will be probably new trees along Meares Street, and not whole frontage has to be designed together with the city and the community, of course, but that's generally like the idea of a current massing concept where we think it's responding to the policies of the city, what we've heard so far from the community and residents and neighbors, and here also responding to the taller BC housing project here to the west. Across the street, the Mosaic effectively being a 7-story massing. It is a 6-story building, but it was actually designed as an office building back in the day with higher floor-to-floor levels. So it is taller than a 6-story residential building. And then here having that gap to the neighbor on the east. And with that, it's the beginning of our consultation. It's the end of the slides we have. It's just the start of the journey, and we're here to listen and to provide answers as far as we can. And we're really looking forward to develop a design and concept together with you and the community. So with that, I just like to hand over back to Liz.
Yeah, I echo what Peter has said, and we're really excited to move this development concept forward. And we're excited to hear your feedback and answer any of your questions that you might have.
Thank you. Thanks for that. And what I would like to do, I can't see all of the CALUC members at the same time. So if Dave or Ashley, Dawn, Owen have questions, now is the time to pose them to Liz or Peter. And maybe raise your hand. I'm not seeing any hands, so I have a couple of questions. I think it's the second time I've heard we've actually met very informally before to talk about this project, and I hear that you want the community to be involved and you want the community input, and this isn't the format at this point for them to do that, but does that mean then that you haven't made a decision whether this will be a rental building or a condominium building? Are you looking for feedback steering you in that direction at all?
Well, we have reached out to the community starting when we acquired the property back in January. So we've had some ongoing dialogue with our neighbors, with feedback ranging from, items that have made its way into our proposal, like setbacks and spacing between buildings, the need for active transportation. We have had quite a bit of feedback with respect to a desire for this to be a condo project. And what we are proposing today is a condo project and not a rental project. And one of the reasons is we've heard some concern from members of the neighborhood about the BC Housing supportive development adjacent to the site. And we view this as an opportunity to demonstrate that a condo project can be successful adjacent to a supportive housing development and encourage a mix of housing types in neighborhoods where these supportive housing projects are located.
Okay, thank you. Second question, if I still don't see any hands up from the committee. Sorry, I missed the math on the numbers. So I heard 50 units, but I counted 28 one bedroom, 12 two bedroom, and 1 live work. Was that supposed to be 10 live work?
So we have 9 studios, 28 one bedroom, 12 two bedroom, and then 1 live work on the ground floor. And currently 22 parking stalls. And it's proposed that they would be all roughed in for electric vehicles, of course, where 50% are then actually installed. So they would share 1 to 2. And then we have bike room allowance for 61 bikes, which would allow for regular bikes, cargo bikes, and also for electric charging stalls for the bikes, which is pretty much standard now.
Sorry, did you say 60 stalls?
61 stalls.
61,
bikes.
wow.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Just to recognize that we don't have a high parking ratio for 50 condos, but the team is confident that the location is supporting that. And also we had a number of meetings with the planning department, and they're very much in support of fairly low parking ratio as well. Just removing a parking lot and provide density and housing as per the policies is definitely high valued.
And just why only 1 live work?
That's the space on the ground floor. Once we have the bike room placed, service rooms, recycling room, it's really along the street frontage, it's the lobby. We really wanted to, or we would like to emphasize a bike room that is transparent, open, and very much visible from the street and from the sidewalk. And then the live work is responding to, so like the commercial use across the street at the Mosaic, but a light version of commercial being live work.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for helping me with the math. I missed the studios. I see a few hands. Dave Thompson doesn't have ability to raise his hand. So I'm going to go to Dave first. He has a question, and then I'll look at the others here for their questions.
Thank you. And sorry, yeah, it's weird. The normal buttons at the bottom are not appearing. But my question is about the studios and 1 bedrooms, the smaller units generally. We hear a lot of discussion in general housing conversations in Victoria about the need for 3 bedrooms and family-sized suites. I see that you've got a project with a lot of suites that would be suitable for 1 person perhaps, or perhaps 2 persons. I assume that if you're putting that forward, you've done significant research on the market. Can you just comment on the amount of demand there is for these smaller units as opposed to, say, the 3-bedroom type?
I think when we're looking at our I guess, the mix of homes. 3-bedroom units is something that we definitely can look to consider as we advance this process and as the market dictates. We are still working through the floor plans right now. And so that's definitely something we consider including. And I understand that that is something of, significant discussion in the community and the need for family size units. And we will look into, whether that's feasible in this instance. But from a market standpoint, what we're seeing is that there is sort of demand for younger urban professionals and first-time home buyers, which is one of the reasons why this preliminary layout has homes that are sort of in a diverse range, but ranging on the smaller size of studios, 1s and 2 bedrooms.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks, Dave. Ashley?
Thanks, John. Just a couple of questions. In the current neighborhood, are there any healthy trees which need to be removed for this project, or is the impact minimum?
I can maybe speak to that. We're actually waiting for the arborist report. We don't have that to date yet. We know there is one tree that is on the east property line closer to Meares Street that I think has been impacted by the current construction that's underway. But to speak to the health of the other trees along the boundary, we really need to wait for that arborist report. But we have them in the survey, so they have been surveyed. We know where they are. And we already are responding to the locations by placing the building massing further away and not having an underground parkade.
So just a follow-up question, since you're waiting for the arborist report, there would be some information provided as to which trees would need to be taken down for the development. So do we have an estimate number as to how many?
Currently, we don't think that because of the design that a tree would have to be removed. It's really only if a tree is sick or becomes a danger tree in the near future. But again, because we want to have the building closer to Meares Street, we're responding to that urban frontage, that we currently don't anticipate that there's a big impact on those trees.
Okay, thanks. And the other question is, what segment of population are you targeting for these houses? Would it be low income, middle income, or high income strata families?
I don't think at this stage we can really speak to what sort of income bracket these units or these homes would be targeted to, and that will be dictated by the market at the time they, a couple of years down the line. But we're hoping that the diversity of unit sizes provides opportunities for a wide variety of individuals to acquire a home close to the downtown core.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley. There are a couple of people who are not on the committee who are asking questions, and I'm sorry, at a preliminary meeting, we can't take questions from the floor. That's just how this plays out. What I would like to bring up, though, is another question from the CALUC, and this is something that we've been asking applicants since the fall, and it's about accessibility. And I know you're still in the planning stages, and so, but how do you provide? How could you provide a housing choice for people of all abilities with this development? Would you consider a percentage of the units would be accessible? I'm just going to go through a couple of the things and then you can answer. If there's a common entrance decided, would it be an accessible common entrance? Interiors looking at increased turning areas and stair assistance. The City of Victoria has amended direction for applications to consider adaptable units and has endorsed a standard. But with parking, they've only endorsed a standard that will require certain types of accessible parking. It's not a bylaw yet. And the last sort of point would be any shared amenities like, waste recycling, whatever, if they would also be ensured to be accessible, and would there be any that would be inaccessible, for example, gardens or something that, anyway, that's just an example. So if either of you could respond to that, that would be very helpful.
Yeah, I mean, happy to speak to that. I mean, accessibility, adaptability, there are quite some differences in between. The building code has increased the design requirements for people with adaptability requirements, and we would obviously have to follow that. Just the nature of having an accessible main building entrance with an automatic door opener, where we have wider corridors that are 5 feet wide, so someone in a wheelchair can actually have that required turning radius. Now, for the individual unit designs, I think that's really premature at this stage to see how big is the actual market. We have a few projects in the office for nonprofit organizations where BC Housing and other provide 10% or have a percentage of how many accessible units would have to be incorporated, and that demand is not very static. I think we would have to do a little bit more research on what actually is needed in the community and in the market.
Yeah, and I think just to build on what Peter said, this is, I think, a really important aspect of development to raise, and something we consider in our projects and have addressed in past projects. We've incorporated accessibility measures for specific purchasers at the time of purchase, whether that's sort of making design changes to their unit to accommodate their specific needs. We're also delivering 7 fully accessible accessible units at our project on Johnson and Cook Street, and so we're very well aware and familiar with accessibility standards these days. So I think as we progress further through our design process, we can consider where we can accommodate accessibility measures that would be helpful and needed. But at this stage, I don't believe we have any amenities that would be inaccessible from that perspective.
Thanks for that. And we'll just continue watching, but the city is also how they're changing bylaws and requirements, because seems like every couple of months there's something more coming down the line, but good to hear that you're on top of that. Thanks. Ashley?
Just a follow-up question. It's more just from my understanding, just how the market is moving from a design perspective. Are there considerations for people who are visually impaired? Is that something which is being taught in the industry, or that's still something something which needs to be thought about going ahead?
Let's give it to Peter on this one.
I mean, I think that's a really good question. And to be honest, it's in the market, at least to my knowledge, it's not been discussed in any bigger scale. Now, again, the building code is responding to visually impaired people, like for egress, escaping, having these strips on flooring that is indicating that there's a stair coming. that's a very light version to really respond to those needs. But I think it's really for the market. I don't have any answer to that really.
Peter, thanks for trying to answer this. The reason I put this question forward is because in my neighborhood, I have a gentleman who's visually impaired and he has a guide dog. And, you know, I observe how he goes about it, and it's just a regular building. And also a couple of months ago, I met a lady who walks down Cook Street who's visually impaired. And, you know, I was just hearing her out about, you know, the challenges she faces. And, you know, even though it's a very small percentage, you know, I just was wondering, you know, if there are any thoughts, maybe.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that would be considered. I mean, it's not, I would not say it's too much to ask for, but I just feel that, you know, if some sort of minimum, you know, supports that would really help.
Thanks for that feedback, Ashley. And it's definitely something that needs to be thought about and considered. And I think we'll take that feedback away and try and learn more about how we can accommodate some of that in our design and whether that's feasible. Really appreciate the feedback.
Okay, well, if there's no further questions, we do have another meeting that we have to get to with a lot of people who I know are interested in the application. Thanks very much, Liz and Peter, and for some of the questions that we've got from the CALUC. And I wish you luck in your next, the next phase. And for the community members, again, this is an opportunity. The applicant has identified as an opportunity for you to give some feedback, some ideas, and you can get a hold of them directly. And they're looking for feedback. I think it's great that they're looking for diversity of in the neighborhood as well. And if there's nothing further, then we'd like to thank you and get to our next meeting, which is for the Fairfield development application.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So Melanie Ransom.
I'll
Sorry.
be sharing the slides. Yeah.
So Melanie Ransom with Arise. We'll turn it over to you.
Awesome. Great. Good evening, everyone. Really thrilled to be here to share more about our proposed development. With us here tonight, we have myself, Melanie Ransom, and Chris Quigley from Arise. We'll start by sharing some context about the proposed development and the density transfer itself. Then we have Kathy from the Land Conservancy, who has also joined us to share more about why the TLC is pursuing a density transfer for the Abakazi Garden site. And lastly, Greg Demant from Cascadia Architects will take us through more robust details about the proposed development, including site plans, renderings, and street views and more. The subject site we're discussing today is 1733-1737 Fairfield Road, a collection of 3 sites situated on the corner of Fairfield and Beechwood on the south side of Fairfield. The location is very well situated, offers lots of day-to-day needs in close proximity. So in a short walking distance, you'll find numerous schools, healthcare facilities, grocery store, parks, and many other amenities, as you'll see here on this map. And from a transportation standpoint, the area is also very well serviced. Fairfield Road really is a spine running through this part of the city, connecting lots of destinations from Oak Bay and direct routes into downtown. But I'll actually pass it off to Chris now, who will share a bit more about the context and the importance of embracing areas like these that are really great candidates for added density.
Great, thank you, Melanie, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for having us tonight. As Melanie was just covering there, I think it's really key to think about both the types of housing our city needs, but also the locations where this housing should go. A lot of cities around the world are trying to address climate crisis, housing crisis, many other challenges. And we believe that homes should be located near existing services, like we just saw on that map previously, near existing amenities and other destinations such as this Fairfield Road corridor. In terms of the types of housing our city needs, many of you may have heard of the concept of a missing middle. And the missing middle speaks to a gap in the city, a gap between single family homes at one end but also high-rise living on the other. And one of the things that Victoria's long-term plan, the OCP, talks about is providing a wide range of housing types to give residents choice. So it's really this need for choice, housing choice, that's been the strong driver as to why we're introducing this project tonight, which, as we'll go through, is a 3.5-story condominium building that really aims to provide a mix of homes that directly respond to a gap in the market. So that brings us on to our project pillars, which really are the defining elements of our proposal and how we've responded to those. First off, as I say, we have diverse housing. We take our role seriously in addressing the housing challenges that we hear about every day. And as an example of that, while working on a townhouse project in the neighborhood, many of you will be familiar with the Rodo project, we heard from a lot of people who wanted to right size. They wanted to stay in the community, but for them, large single-family housing or multi-level townhouses wasn't a viable option for them. One of the things we heard a lot about from people coming to our sales center, coming to our office, just from community meetings, was that stairs, both internal stairs, but also external stairs, offer a real challenge for many people. And so there's a strong interest in providing different options of housing. As that's why we've designed this project around the concept of single level living that allows people to age in place, but also stay within the Fairfield Gonzalez neighborhood and continue their daily routines. The second project pillar is around design, thoughtful design, which at one end speaks to the opportunity for purpose-built and purpose-designed spaces, like in this instance, trying to think about those right-sizing options, but also speaks to our overarching design approach, which Cascade is going to be talking about very shortly. And lastly, the final pillar, which is a really important one for this project, is the pillar around protecting green space. And this comes in the form of a creative partnership with the Land Conservancy in the form of a density transfer. So the green space we're referencing is Adaptability Garden, which many of you will be familiar with as a very celebrated community amenity and home to a renowned heritage house. And Kathy will be touching on that in a few moments. The Land Conservancy's desire to protect this green space has brought forward this collaboration between TLC and the RISE in the form of a density transfer. So a density transfer is a fairly common tool used in many cities across North America, often where heritage buildings can sell their development rights in order to protect and maintain their heritage status. Those zoning rights can be realized by someone else, and it's really a win-win where they can protect the existing heritage building or piece of land, and the density gets to be used in a more appropriate location. So in this instance, we know that Adaptability Garden is an important asset for the public, for visitors to Victoria, and that's acting as the donor site, with the land at 1733 to 37 being the receiver of those density rights. So this density transfer in terms of planning process will officially downzone the entire Adaptability Garden lands to a zone that maintains the current activities, but also ensures that the site receives heritage designation and can no longer be under threat of redevelopment. And it's also worth sharing that of the available 35,000 square feet of residential density available currently on the Adaptability Garden site, we at Arise are only proposing to use less than 30% of that density to transfer over to the site in question. So Kathy from the TLC is here tonight, so I'm just going to pass over to Kathy to tell you a bit more about the TLC and Adaptability Garden.
Thanks very much and welcome. Thank you for joining this meeting, everybody. Nice to sort of see you virtually. So the Land Conservancy acquired Adaptability Garden in the year 2000, and we actually explored the idea of removing the density at that time. So this is not a new concept for us. We've touched and circled back onto it several times over the years. The property is currently zoned multifamily, as you heard, and that's not consistent with the current use of the property, as you know, and the activities taking place there. So downzoning would bring the property into compliance, while at the same time lowering its market value. It was mentioned that other cities do density transfers. This is kind of a new concept for Victoria, but in Vancouver, for example, a church that was trying to save its site sold its density to the city, and in Vancouver, they buy the density and hold it, and then a future development can purchase that density from the city. We don't have that kind of mechanism here, but Victoria did work with us, and we developed an agreement with them back in 2014 that outlined what the process would look like. So the process is that TLC would seek a developer, would seek a development project, and would bring a joint rezoning application. So the two things are working at the same time. So this will be us releasing our density, removing it from Abkhazia Garden, and the other project adding some of that density into their site. We'll also be working with the city to designate the house as a heritage structure. So that'll further protect the property from any changes in the future, which we think is very important. So the two processes together, the rezoning and the heritage designation, are working to add layers of protection to ensure that Abkhazia Garden stays as a community treasure. And we feel that it protects both the built structures and the garden itself. So there's really two aspects to Abkhazia Garden that the visitors enjoy. But a rezoning application such as this requires significant staff time and work on the part of the Land Conservancy. So hence the reason why after 22 years it didn't take place. But we are excited now to be moving forward with this application. We do know that along with the significant staff time, that such a process does potentially bring exposure and reputational risk to the organization. So we do not take this process lightly. We analyzed this project. Our board of directors spent time deliberating on this, and we have decided to move forward on this project with Arise. But we do recognize that it's the local community input and ultimately the mayor and council who will make the decision about whether this project is successful. So I just want to say that I look forward to your questions.
Great, thank you very much, Kathy. And just to finish off the presentation, I'm going to hand over to Cascadia Architects, who's going to talk a little bit more about how we've come through with the design for the site and some details around the proposal.
Thanks, Chris. My name is Greg Demant. I'm a principal with Cascadia Architects. In addition to my partner, Peter, who presented the previous project, I'm joined this evening by Sarah Hewen, who is with our office and is fulfilling the role of project architect for this project. And as well, we're joined by Bianca Bodley, who's the landscape architect for the project. In the interest of time, I'll do a brief presentation here, but everyone is available for the question and answer. So just to reorient you back to the site, we're looking at the corner of Beechwood and Fairfield, the three lots there to the northeast of Beechwood, starting at the corner. And Melanie, could you advance the slide? So as was just explained, with the density transfer that's envisioned, Arise was looking to for a building in the neighborhood of about 20 units on the site. And that would typically mean a standard condominium floor plate of front and back oriented units, which is about 22 meters wide. And if you just place that on the site, it would sit in a location like this and occupy about that proportion of the site. If you could advance the slide, please, Melanie. So the first move that we've done is to push the proposed building site closer to Fairfield, similar to what you see with Aurora Manor, which is the 3.5-story building or 3-story building across from Hollywood Park. And as well, the Montague Court there, which is immediately beside us across Beechwood, all have a slightly closer frontage to the street. And Fairfield's a wide enough road that it can accommodate that kind of proximity. It actually feels quite comfortable. And Melanie, if you could advance the slide. What that does for us is it opens up the backyard of the site, keeps our building form in line with the houses that are fronting onto Fairfield Road, and helps to maintain that kind of spacing of built form that exists in that neighborhood currently amongst the single family homes. So we could go to the next slide now. If we look at that in section, as I said, around 20 units for this size of site will result typically in about a 4-story building. And so that's what you see as a kind of schematic here with Fairfield Road on the left. And so that's where we start. As we start to shape and program the building,
Next slide, please, Melanie. The first thing we did was look at the ground floor on Fairfield, where it's a fairly busy street, and converted those lower 2 floors facing Fairfield to townhouse style units. So we have 6 townhouse style units along Fairfield. And what that does is it lifts the living area to the 2nd floor and gives a bit of separation and privacy from the street. That leaves, if we go to the next slide, that leaves the remainder of the upper floors for that target demographic that Arise has mentioned, people who are looking to downsize and right size in the neighborhood, but who want single level living. And so we have then the 3rd and 4th and part of the 2nd floor available as these single level living units. Next slide, please, Melanie. But it's our feeling as architects that within this context, that something less than 4 stories is more visually appropriate in terms of fitting in with the neighborhood. And so the next move is to tuck in that 4th floor, create more of a penthouse level as opposed to a full building floor. What that does is from grade, from the kind of the pedestrian realm, it starts to obscure the vision of that 4th floor and give the appearance of a 3-story building. And if we go to the next slide, so we actually, using our 3D software, our modeling software and views from around the area, looking from Beechwood and along Fairfield from both directions and so on, we've actually shaped a mansard style roof that effectively conceals from most viewpoints that the presence of that reduced 4th floor. And so if we go to the next slide, that was the first key move of shaping the roof line of the building to give it that 3.5-story feel as Chris was mentioning. The second key move is that we've decided to avoid underground parking on the site. And again, due to the size of the site, the proportions of the site, any kind of underground here would really be property line to property line. And that's always disruptive. It's disruptive to neighbors. It extends construction periods. But the other thing it does is it removes the natural kind of ecology of the site and hydrology of the site by basically, putting a big concrete box underneath the entire site. So here we've opted to park at grade. And what this does is it allows us to use stormwater infiltration, maintain the natural hydrological patterns in the site, but it also gives us the opportunity to plant trees that will grow to scale to full size in the native earth. And this is important for us because it creates that screen between the single family homes behind to the east and the north of the property and the building here. So we're further mitigating the transition between this multi-level building and the single family homes around. We can go to the next slide. So this is the result architecturally. You're looking here from Beechwood and Fairfield across the street, just in front of where the Roto is now completing. And as you can see, you're reading 3 stories in this in the 3-dimensional presentation of the building. The bottom 2 floors on Fairfield, as I said, they're 2-story townhouses, and they present as townhouse units to the street. Bianca has organized a series of smaller scale maple and snowbell trees at each entrance to the townhouses. So you have those individual entries that give that residential character and flavor, like you see with the Montague Court across the street. And then those 2 ground floor levels are clad in a pale brick, so a high quality material that we feel is appropriate for the neighborhood and for the traditional kind of sense of the site. And then the 3rd floor is part of this roof form, this mansard style roof, clad in a metal shingle. So again, durable, high quality material, and has these dormer window forms that again have echoes of a kind of traditional building style that present to Fairfield Road. And you can see the building sort of stepping down towards the rear along Beechwood, and we've got another view of that coming up.
Excuse me for interrupting, Greg. We had said 15 minutes. I've been trying to get a message to Melanie here. So we really need you to wrap up, please.
Absolutely. So we have the project stats here. We can come back to this through the question and answer if you like. This is looking from the corner of Earl. You can see again the 3 stories plus the 4th level being hidden by the roof shape. And then the next slide. And this is at Beechwood Avenue view with, as you can see, main building entries from Beechwood, and the vehicle entrance is also off of Beechwood. You can see the building stepping down from 3 to 2 to 1 level as it transitions to the single family homes beside. And I believe if we go to the next slide, just Bianca can speak to this in the question and answer, but you can see by the indication here of the trees around the site, we've got the little ornamental trees along Fairfield Road, but we've got space for a significant kind of little grove of trees in the northeast corner that will act as a really nice contribution to the kind of shared backyard space of the area. And we are here at step 2 in the design line development timeline. So from this meeting, we'll be making the formal rezoning application. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. So, like I said, we do like to stick to 15 minutes. Unless there's something else from the applicant, we will open up the floor to questions. And if I could just ask you to unshare your screen, I can then see everybody.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. So I'm going to ask people to put their hand up. I'm getting quite a few comments here, and they're questions directed at me. And I would like to suggest to the people who are asking me questions to please ask a question of the applicant. I can't answer the questions. We're here to facilitate and to encourage dialogue. So unfortunately, I don't know who put their hand up first. So I'm going to go from the first screen, and I'm going to write down some names, and then I'll get to you in the order that I'm seeing. So I'm sorry if that sounds weird, but I don't have a choice. There's 75 people on this call. So I'm going to go with Robin. Sorry, Ashley, we usually wait until after the public has had their comments and questions. So I'm going to go with Robin and Marlene first, and then I'll look at the other slides and see who else is here. So Robin, if you'd like to ask your question, and please keep your question or comments to 2 minutes, please.
Okay. Looking at the main entrance off Beechwood, it appears to have some steps to it. Is there also a ramp? And then how about the townhouses, consistent with your single floor living? Could they be roll-in suites? And then will you be including an accessible parking stall or any scooter parking?
I can take that question. So the entrance off Fairfield, the building ground floor is raised by a couple steps off of Fairfield Road. What that means is that the townhouse entrances are not accessible. You would, from their front door, you would go up a set of stairs to get in their front door. The building main entrance on Beechwood has stairs and a ramp. So it's possible to roll a chair or scooter or, stroller up the ramp and enter the building that way. And you can enter the townhouse main level from the interior hallway. So they have accessibility in that fashion. We do have an elevator in the building, obviously, so the upper floor units, the single level units are all accessible. We are meeting building code requirements for common area and arise. And what I mean by that is that our hallways, like Peter had said previously, our hallways are all 1.5 meters wide. Doorways are minimum 2'10" width to enter suites and so on. But we are looking with Arise at having a certain number of units within the building be adaptable in terms of their configuration. And what that means is that they are not accessible units now, but the rooms are sized sufficient that they could be adapted to the lifestyle of somebody who's actually living in a confined to a chair.
I also asked about parking.
Yes, so we would have at least one accessible parking stall, and that is the current requirement. We'll be obviously keeping tabs on the City of Victoria's parking bylaw upgrades as to whether there's additional stalls become required through that.
I'll just add on top of Greg's comments, thanks, Greg, just around the townhouse units, and that there's internal stairs to those units as well to get the bedrooms off Fairfield Road onto the second level, and that really is from a desire to provide again housing choice within the building as well, so that there's 2-level units for people that maybe desire more of a townhouse form, but to Greg's point, the majority are embracing the single level living through potentially the ramp from Beechwood and then elevator and entrance off the corridor.
It's worth mentioning that there are, I believe, 19 units in the project, and 6 of them are townhouses. So there's 13 units that are single level living.
Sorry, did you say?
Okay.
Sorry, how many townhouses?
6.
Six.
Thanks. Sorry, Robin.
And the last of my questions was, will there be electric scooter parking and charging?
And so we have designated a bike storage room. We do have on the main floor, and that is accessible via the parking area as well as from the hallways. And we can certainly look at providing scooter charging and parking in that same area.
Yeah, I can't see how that would work with the bike room unless there was a really big automatic door. But anyway, I've planted the idea in your head.
Yeah, absolutely. And we often do put automatic operators on the bike room doors because it's just as difficult. Well, it's not just, but it's difficult to get your bicycle through a door as it is and hold it open, while you're wheeling your bike, as it is to if you are in a scooter.
Okay, thank you, Robin. Is that I'd like to move to Marlene, please.
Simple question. Does Arise already own the 3 properties there? In short, there's going to be development no matter what. It's just a matter of what the development will be like.
Hi, Marlene. Thanks for the question. We have an agreement with the existing landowner, subject to the rezoning. So, I mean, they're zoned for potential higher forms of housing anyway. So, we've got that agreement definitely with the intent to move forward with a proposal that redevelops the site. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Marlene. Bob?
Yes, just following up quickly on what Mr. Quigley said. I understood that this was zoned R1G.
That's the existing zoning. Yes, there's different.
To be accurate, yes, it's zoned for residential at this time. Correct.
Existing zoning is single family. The Victoria policy document that speaks about how they want the city to change contemplates higher forms on this site.
Yeah, it does. But again, if I understand it, in Gonzales, we don't have an updated neighborhood and community plan that says that this is what it's going to move to, and this is still a traditional residential neighborhood, according to the OCP. Is that not correct?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Gonzales has got a neighborhood plan that's 20 years old. So that's a long time ago.
Just the comment would be that you're just a little ahead of yourself here, saying that it is, zoned for something more than what is currently there. I'm following this because I know that there was a lot of concern with the Roto development, and having seen it now in a partially substantially completed stage, it really doesn't transition very well to the surrounding traditional neighborhood. And it strikes me when I looked at these drawings that this was going to be, shall we say, more of the same. So the OCP for this area suggests under the small villages area, which essentially is what Fairfield is up to 3 stories. So the rationale of 4 stories and would 3 stories not provide a more suitable transition on the south side of Fairfield and a transition into the neighborhoods. That in part because you have the really extremely attractive, eclectic, certainly, Montague Courts, immediately adjacent to that. And when I look at the drawings that you have, I worry that this is just going to absolutely domineer that rather attractive and to some extent a sort of a historical Victoria look for a neighborhood.
Yeah, we've had some really good feedback on Rodo, so everyone's entitled to their opinion on context and fit. But you're right, now the siding's on and the 3 blocks are formed out. We've had some really good feedback from people just stopping in the street and looking at it, saying how well it transitions not to just to the park, but also across Fairfield into the land around it. So one other thing I would just add is that there is the unique element of this project having the density transfer, so that is a unique part to how we're thinking about what needs to go on this site to accommodate the donor density from the Adaptability garden. But as Greg was sketching out, the 3.5-story form is a response to how we can work with what's around, but also recognizing, as we said right at the start, that Fairfield Road's a corridor of walk, bike, transit, and we need to be putting homes near where people can access those services.
I'll just add to that we did in doing our studies for the project and of the roof form, that whether this is a strict 3-story or a 4-story form, with this architectural concept, the change is basically negligible. That the roof form, the roof shape creates that space that you can occupy, and so we've satisfied ourselves that the architectural expression, the architectural form and style will relate to the character of the neighborhood and can accommodate that extra level without increasing its sense of mass or size.
No.
Okay, thank you. If we can move to another question, we've got several, and I think we've talked this one out. Lynn, and then it looks like Kathy Ray's iPad, but it doesn't look like Kathy Ray. But so Lynn, and then Greg McKelvey after that. Lynn?
So my first question would be, how is the density transfer agreement? Is that accomplished with a covenant?
There's not a covenant contemplated because we own the Adaptability garden. So with properties that we own, we don't traditionally also add a covenant, if that's what you were meaning. And there wasn't a contemplation of a covenant on the donor site either, because there's not enough green space there to warrant a covenant.
So I guess I'm just wondering why, if you already own this property and you don't need a covenant, like why do you even need to do this to protect the property if you already own it?
Well, because the property is not in proper zone. So the property, our Adaptability garden is actually zoned residential, so it's not conforming to its use. So from the time of acquisition, TLC wanted to bring it in, alignment with a proper zone so that we can have the activities that occur there. So that's one reason. And then the second was to get the heritage designation in place. So we feel it adds more protection because it's just a harder road to climb to remove all of that. If a future situation put the garden into any kind of jeopardy, it's just increasing, taking away its valuation and increasing its protection.
But it seems that without a covenant, you really, there's no guarantees of anything. So that's just a comment, because we've seen that even with covenants, there's no guarantee of anything. Similar to 902 Foul Bay. But that's one comment. So back to Arise. So you mentioned that there's already another owner that owns the properties, and you've done a deal with them so that, and it's subject to rezoning. So right now, the homes that are there are tenanted. So those people are going to be displaced. I believe that's correct. They could potentially be candidates for the missing middle that is coming down the road, but instead you want to do this project. And so this is just a comment. It seems to me that whatever deal you've done with the landowner, it's far more profitable for him to do that deal with you than to sell those properties in a red hot market. So it makes me wonder how profitable this project really will be to Arise. It all, these are just comments of how I'm seeing how this is playing out. And it really bothers me that, especially with the missing middle coming down the pipe, that those properties will be lost to a project that's clearly all about profit.
Okay, Lynn, if I can just ask you to wind up, and
That's
if we
it.
can get an
That's
answer.
that's all I have to
Okay.
say. That's it.
Thanks. If we can just get an answer from Arise.
I mean, I'm not sure if there's a question in there, but I'll say a couple of things, which is that we're looking after the tenants in those existing buildings, communicating with them regularly, making sure that they get the supports required as part of not just Victoria's assistance policy, but things that we want to do to support them as well. As a company,
one of those tenants found out
as
about
a
this from
Lynn, can you
sorry,
please
if I can just finish.
Please let him finish.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
As a company, we fully embrace missing middle housing across a number of projects. We've got a ton of rental projects currently going through the City of Victoria's planning process, as well as other areas. Those are buildings, if approved and built out, allow people to transition from buildings like this if they want to look for new rental housing. So, I encourage you to support our other projects where we're adding to the rental housing stock to give people more housing choice.
Okay, thank you. If we can go to Kathy Ray, please.
Yeah, and I would say I'm not Kathy. That's my lovely wife. I'm sitting here right next to your proposed development. I live in that beautiful greenhouse that you showed in your photo. My concern is around, regardless the scale of the building. I don't want to make sure that it's not out of context. This is a residential community. We bought this house, a decade ago. Yes, we're on a transportation corridor. We're near a grocery store. My question is, my comment is, I want to make sure that it's not out of scale. So you clearly have some ideas around how to make it not 4-story, edging the top unit back. My real question is around mitigation during construction. So should something go ahead for 2 years or more, we're going to be listening to jackhammers and nails and construction. Is there any noise mitigation, safety mitigation that you can put in place for my lovely wife and I and our 3 really young kids? Is there anything that you would put in place?
Yeah, no, thanks for the question. I'd say just a couple of things on construction. Well, firstly, it's hard to compare it to the construction project across the road because that did involve a lot of underground works. It was built during COVID, so there was some additional delays on that. As Greg was mentioning, with surface parking, there is the ability to build quicker, which obviously brings advantages to just the period of time where, let's be honest, there is disruption during construction activities. There's bylaws which mitigate noise and dust and cleanliness, etc. But would be very happy to, if approved, to meet with you to understand how we can work together. If there's special things we can put in place on site, or as a buffer, or just try and understand your needs, just to make sure that from a day-to-day activity standpoint, you're fully aware of what's happening.
One thing that we have seen in other projects in the past work quite well is a very detailed and live communication plan between the contractor and the immediate residents surrounding. So in other words, there's sort of weekly updates as to this is what we're doing over the course of the next week or the next 2 weeks. This is what you can expect in terms of delivery vehicles or noise, things like that. And then there's an opportunity for people to wait, like communicate and express if there's going to be issues for them about anything in particular. So that's another potential possibility.
Thank you. Thank you for the question and the answers. Greg McKelvey. Sorry if I
a couple of
didn't pronounce that right.
questions. Could you put up at some point in time, can you put up that statistics slide that you had showing number of units, number of parking spots and all that stuff? The question is, how many units are there? I think there are 19. How many parking stalls are there? Is it going to be wood or concrete construction? How big are the units themselves in terms of square footage, including the townhomes and other homes in there, and the other. Yeah, I think that's all the questions I had at this point.
Yeah, so some of the stats are up.
The cost of the what is do you know what the cost of the units is going to be? The townhomes and other units.
Maybe I'll just start with the stats, Greg. Hopefully you can see on the screen some of the more detailed statistics on the mix of homes. In terms of the townhomes, they're around 1,200 square feet. The one bedroom it's quite a large one bedroom just by nature of the building. It's more like 800 square feet. And then I believe the one bed and dens are around 1,000 square feet. And then two beds and two beds and dens are more like 1,200 square feet. So hopefully that gives you a bit of a sense of ranges of the different types of units. In terms of price, a little bit like the conversation on the previous meeting, on the previous proposal, it's hard to say until we're sort of closer to when we're maybe at decision time with mayor and council, which sometimes can be 2+ years away. So it's hard to put a price on things. It's a market project, so by nature it will be subject to what the market can bear, which, as we all know, is a function of supply and demand and other things. We know that Gonzales is a desirable area because of the beach, because of the park, because of a lot of the things we've talked about. So hopefully that gives you a sense of a bit more about the project.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. Or concrete versus wood construction.
Oh, sorry. Yes, yeah. It's a wood frame building.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Annette. Annette, are you with
Hi.
us? Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I just have one question. I'm noticing there's no mention of garden plots for growing vegetables. None, that hasn't been included. I don't understand why.
I'm going to go last, but no one else is.
That's my question.
There is at the second level an outdoor amenity space that would be common for the building, and there's the possibility of including some gardening, like raised beds there that could be used by residents for vegetable gardening or flower gardens.
Okay.
It would be. It's not. It is a single area, so it's not extensive, but that possibility definitely exists there. We have a plan to animate that space with not only a little bit of patio seating and so on, but also active landscape like that.
Thanks.
Thank you for that. I don't see any other hands up from the public. And what I would like to do is see if the CALUC members have some questions. I know that, oh, sorry, Janice. We'll get to Janice in a sec. After Janice, I think Ashley had a question and
sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Good. Sorry, for some reason I can't get the camera on. It's actually Kevin Warren.
Okay.
And I guess and there's a number of things I'd like to talk about, but I'll try to be brief. It seems like Arise is basically giving money and assisting with rezoning to the Land Conservatory. And what they're doing in return is basically usurping most of the planning and zoning standards to increase the density. And I think it's troubling. And this is the view that I have, and I think there's a number of others, that this is a highly disruptive project. It doesn't fit in, and there's a number of things, but the land transfer seems to be used as a lever to basically disregard the whole neighborhood plan. And when you go through the neighborhood plan, it doesn't meet any of them. And by the way, the neighborhood plan is dated 2018. It's not 20 years old. So I think we're getting a development that's less than desirable and under the guise of helping out density, and it really isn't. And going through the things that don't comply with either the OCP, the Gonzales neighborhood plan, and the design guidelines for attached residential, if you start looking at what the Fairfield corridor was intended for, it was a family kind of orientated ground level, maximum height 3 levels, not 3.5. And the setbacks were supposed to align with their neighbors, not, and so it should be set back. There should be some green space. It's basically all paved and a couple of trees in one corner being put up. The FSR is what, 1.5, and it's supposed to be 1. The design should try to fit into the neighborhood and be required to. The mass is way greater than anything around it, so it doesn't fit in. And the parking should be, I think, at 28, isn't it, for parking versus the 20 or 22. So in summary, I think it's a design that isn't embraced by the neighborhood at all. In fact, we were going to ask the CALUC if we could send comments to you. There was about 25 of us that were, wanted to put thoughts on paper and basically kind of push back and say this isn't good enough.
Just before you get an answer from Arise, we have had a lot of comments.
Looking for an answer.
Oh, okay. Well, thanks for your comments. We have received a lot of comments from the public, both through the development tracker comment box and also direct emails to us and questions. And so anything that comes to us will be forwarded to the city, and anything that comes to us in time for the community report, which would be next week, we will attach to that as well. But I really strongly advise any community members or groups of members who want to get their points across, they can send an email direct to the mayor and council. It does obviously help us if you CC us as well, because then we know what's going on in the community.
So Joanne, do you mind if I send the document to you with the neighbors' names?
Yeah, that's fine. Just send it to Plan and Zone, the email that's on the website, and that'd be fine.
Joanna, can I maybe just respond to those comments, because there was a couple of inaccuracies in there?
Yeah, just a sec. And then we're going to go to Bob, and then we're going to go to April, and then Bob, and so we are going to listen to Chris first. Thanks. Sorry, I'm trying to keep a timer here too, as well, to keep this on track.
Yeah, no, thanks, Joanna. Yeah, just a couple of things on that. I think it's important just to spell out the nature of the Arise and the density transfer part of the relationship. I mean, what I would say is that if we were not in a partnership through the density transfer with TLC, this site still warrants exactly what we're proposing today. I really do, in terms of efficient use of land, that's called out in the OCP, giving housing choice to people, that's called out in the OCP, putting homes near existing parks, services, amenities, that's called out in the OCP. So if we're thinking about solving housing crisis, climate crisis, all these different challenges we face, we have to think smartly about how we use our land. So whether it's a partnership with TLC or if it's using another mechanism to get public benefit back into our city, into our neighborhoods, this site still warrants a 3.5-story form building that I think, as Greg was saying earlier, really relates to the character of the area. So I'll say that, but then just finally, this is in Gonzales. Gonzales neighborhood plan was 2002, 20 years ago. Fairfield was the 2018.
I was looking at the 2018 document. You probably got an old one.
No, there's no adopted. If you're talking about adopted neighborhood plan that was ratified by mayor and council, Gonzales Plans 02. There's draft directions from from more recently, definitely not ratified by mayor and council there.
But it gives direction to planning, and I would suggest that if you live in the neighborhood, you probably care about what the plan says. And I would encourage you to look at it and say, this is actually not a bad design for the neighborhood versus what you're proposing.
Can we move on, please? I think we're getting the point. And I would like to just keep moving on with some of the other questions so that we can wind this up before 9 o'clock. I'd like to ask, sorry, Chris, did you have any other points that you were trying to get across? And yeah, thanks, Kevin, for muting.
No, let's move on, definitely.
Okay, thanks. April, where did April go?
Hi. It's not April, it's her husband, Sean, using her computer, but that's fine.
Okay, Sean.
And in for April. I have a question for Kathy from the Land Conservancy. I'm curious, Kathy, about why this goal of heritage designation couldn't be accomplished without a density transfer. I mean,
Well, it certainly
if
could.
a desire, you could have done it a long time ago.
It certainly could, and it actually exists. There is a heritage designation. The trouble is that the city attached it to the wrong lot. So this is cleaning that up. There's already a heritage plaque on the house, but it's not attached to that actual property. So we're cleaning that up and working with the city to move it to the correct spot. And it does bring a little more attention. They want a heritage revitalization plan. So we're providing a planning document around that to them. So it brings the heritage planning process onto the site more actively. But yeah, it could definitely be done without
Without the density transfer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so why should I, as a community member, support a density transfer that introduces greater intrusion, mass, and disturbance to my neighborhood and my neighbors, to support you with a $300,000 cash donation from Arise?
Well, that of course is a community input question. I'm not going to tell you what you should think and how you should respond to the project. We have this ability to move the density off. It's been contemplated for a long time by our organization. So we feel if there is a way to move it, we would like to take it away. And there is value in that density. So of course, as a charity, we look to that value and try to make some benefit to the organization from moving that density. So those are the reasons, but the community input, as I said, this is a mayor and council and community decision on the project itself.
So my final question to you is, with this density transfer and reduction of density on the property, does that protect Abkhazia in perpetuity?
It increases the level of protection. I think you know probably the TLC's history, so we're very sensitive to putting anything at risk. We just feel that for an organization or anyone to get involved with this property in the future, it makes it harder to find value in it. So it's removing value from the property and also making it align with the actual zoning for the uses that are taking place there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Bob, and then Lawrence.
Yes, just very quickly, I understand Gonzales does not have a current neighborhood plan ratified by council, but Missing Middle is not ratified by council either. So there's a lot to being presented as Missing Middle initiative, but it is not a project or a bylaw endorsed by council at this point. It's under discussion, but it's premature to say that Missing Middle criteria does have standing. The other thing that does have standing though is the official community plan. And looking at my official community plan, urban residential up to 3 stories, small urban village, low-rise buildings up to approximately 3 stories. So perhaps one of the things that I see is that we've gone to 4 stories. Maybe you're a little bit ahead of yourself. I do have a question about underground parking, and I understand that it's somewhat expensive, but I worry that in this day and age, when we're creating level paved, even water permeable parking, we're really going backwards. What we really want to have is a thriving urban forest canopy, and we're not getting that with paved parking lots or even rain shedding parking lots. Is it not possible to build underground parking, have cutaways in areas that will give you the required natural soil depth or contours to grow proper trees, rather than this idea that we've got to have lot line to lot line or underground parking? Why does it have to be this way?
Maybe I'll hand over to Greg, because I think we touched on it in our presentation, but we had to jam in a lot just in terms of how what we're proposing actually advances the landscape strategy for the site. And Greg, maybe also Bianca as well.
Yeah, sure. To answer your question directly, Bob, like in theory, there's no, you can do what you've described, right? Which is that you have your underground parking under only a portion of your site, and you leave a portion of your site available for other things. That all depends on the size of your site. And this site, because parking is driven by required aisle widths, stall depths, and stall widths, and turning radiuses and things like that, right? So, and ramp slopes. So without getting into like boring detail, by the time you slope down at the maximum required slope, and you lay out parking according to the aisle and parking stall dimensions that are required, you cannot get the parking on the site without filling the site. Because the other thing you have to do is you have to take staircases down there and elevators down there, and all the services that you need for exiting and things like that, right? So basically, you lose, as soon as you do that, you lose the ability to grow anything that is more than ornamental, because it's growing in maximum 2.5 or 3 feet of soil on top of the parking deck. So we, in this case, recognizing that we are backing onto residential backyards, felt that there was a better advantage in terms of the fit of the building to stick with the at-grade parking and allow for the natural soil volume to be able to grow not just one, but a handful of trees that will grow to size.
Thank you, Greg. A question from Lawrence.
Thank you. I just wondered if the proponents might could just spend a little more time explaining how the proposed development meets the missing middle. I'm a professor at UBC and coordinate the urban studies program, so I know what missing middle is, and my work is based in Copenhagen and Groningen in the north of the Netherlands, and I see it all the time, and it's not completely obvious how this would do that and how it would contribute to building that, because it's kind of a frontier, in some ways kind of a frontier gentrification project right now, but it's not necessarily that. But I wonder if you could just explain it a bit more.
Sure. Yeah. No. Great question. Thanks for being on the call, Lawrence. Yeah. I mean, as you well know, missing middle is sort of focused more on a form of housing. Sometimes, we talk about it as affordability or having other benefits, but it's a form of housing that plugs that gap where people, maybe in single-family homes, think maybe their only other option is quite dense mid-rise apartments or higher form towers, etc. So I think it spreads from the work City of Victoria has been doing, as well as other places. It spreads across a number of different forms, including townhouses, stacked townhouses, low-rise apartments, and forms like this. Definitely has the benefits the middle missing housing is trying to achieve, which is reducing greenhouse gases through putting these types of forms in the right areas so that people are driving less, more efficient use of land, so that we're not building homes in other areas where maybe we're having greater ecological impact. So yeah, for us, as I mentioned in an earlier answer, there's this is one of a few other projects where we're looking at increasing the number of homes on a site to bring choice, not necessarily going with a podium and tower form, which really maxes out density, but tries to put homes in a more sensitive way that reflects some of what's in the area to date, but also provides some more choice.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Thank you. JIB?
Hi, yeah, that's me. Sorry, it's Roxanne. Can you hear me?
Right. Yep. we
Great.
can.
I just had a quick question about electric vehicle charging, and I also had one comment. I just want to encourage those saying that they don't want this in their neighborhood to think about the inherent privilege that you have in saying that, and also that you live within 2 kilometers of the province's capital, with booming tech and tourism, and lots of the young people want to live in your area. And so I really want to just try in these conversations to have less negativity and toxicity, because it makes people my age not want to be a part of the process. So I just wanted to kind of mention that. And then, yeah, my question was just about electric vehicle charging.
Oh my God, you.
What's okay, excuse me. Can you
Excuse me?
please turn off your mic and please keep it civil, whoever that was. Can you please ask the question about e-cars? Thank you. You just said e-cars. So I
Yeah,
don't
it was
know what
just
the
about
question is.
charging, electric vehicle charging.
Thank you.
Greg, did you want to take that one?
Yes, actually, Sarah, maybe you can just refresh my memory as to what the provision for electric charging is.
That, I believe, has not actually been confirmed. Arise, I may actually have to defer to your comment on that.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah,
we can have a group effort for this
Yeah.
answer. And yeah, the definitely the desire would be to reflect what the market's calling for, which is a big uptick in electric charging, not just for cars, but also for bikes as well. So we would be looking that 100% of parking stalls would have the ability to it's called be electrified, and the ability to put in the necessary charging infrastructure at the owner's free will. But yeah, all of the necessary bits of kit would be there.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy, and then Scott.
Hi, yeah, thank you. I just want to say a comment. I don't think I have a question. I was a long time resident of Fairfield, but I was displaced when my landlord sold my condo in December 2020. So since then, I've been living in Vic West. But my comment's just that this type of development represents something attainable for me to move back to Fairfield in the future. And I think it's a modest project. If anything, I think that it could support even less parking, which could allow for bigger units and more green space. So those are my only comments. Thanks.
Thank you, Jeremy. Scott.
Yes, thank you. I've lived in the neighborhood for just about 5 years now, so I think I know it quite well. I live on Beechwood in very close proximity to the proposed development. I do appreciate the density transfer, albeit I think that's, that could probably happen anywhere. And I do understand the comment that this site warrants this type of development. But I think, like to point out that the development across the street is kind of that missing middle, and it was built for that purpose. And it is a for-profit business with Arise. They build great buildings, and I understand that. So I didn't oppose that development for all the reasons that this one is trying to support this one. But my concern is with the community plan. This is a single family dwelling in and around this neighborhood. It's a very safe neighborhood. And I can tell you that almost every house on my street, including ours, have suites in them. So there is a situation where there's a lot of people renting on the street, which is good, which helps satisfy that need for housing. It adversely has affected the parking on the street, unfortunately. When you come down Beechwood on the weekends or the evenings, it's wall-to-wall cars, as well as Lillian, because there's essentially very few parking spaces. I think this building is going to, I realize there's, I think 22 odd spaces or however many, but I do feel that parking will be aggravated with visitors and so on. So I'm not opposed to this type of development. This, in my mind, needs to be smaller or moved blocks to the east or west, because we've just had this construction by Arise by the tennis courts, which is meeting that missing middle, and it's very densification right there. We have an apartment complex that's just slightly to the southwest, again meeting that missing middle. We have Montague Court, which is mixed residential and commercial, and our fear is that that will also be developed into a fairly large condo type complex. So, and I see these properties, there's already a deal in place, but my concern is we've got lots of families on the street, young children, we've got seniors, they walk by our homes, and I feel that this missing middle piece has already been constructed in this immediate proximity. So I would like to see this type of development, you know, moved east or west so that we're not condensing and densifying this one area so much, because I think it is changing this immediate community. But I do appreciate, you know, the need for housing, but I don't really feel that it necessarily needs to be right there when it's just been done across the street. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. Can I maybe just respond to that?
Yes, and then we're going to go to the CALUC because it's almost 8:45 and we want to finish at 9 o'clock. So Chris, over to you.
I'll keep it quick. No, thanks, Scott, for those thoughts, very considered thoughts. I appreciate the reflections on Rodo and other things. What I would say is that I don't think the missing middle or housing choice is a box that you can just tick from one development or from the suites in the homes in the neighborhood and say, we're done, let's move on. If we take the case of Rodo, that was 2 years ago that it sold out. We get people knocking on our door most weeks. We get emails, we get texts and calls asking about, you know, are there units available in that project? Have we got units available in upcoming projects, about 902 Bay, about even this one when we launched it a month ago. So there is growth. There's growth from people coming to Victoria. There's growth from people wanting new options that are currently within Victoria. So yeah, I would just say that it is a dynamic thing where our communities have to respond to that change and that growth. And so Rodo met a need at the time, but it really just scratched the surface, I think, in terms of what people actually need.
Thank you, Chris. I do appreciate that. My comment is more about balance, that I don't feel we need to keep condensing this small footprint here. Thank you.
Yeah, but I'd be very happy to meet Scott and go through some of those thoughts.
Thank you. And thank you to all the community members who showed up today and who have been providing information and feedback and suggestions on this application. It's one of the ones that are happening in our community that has garnered a lot of interest. Anyway, Ashley and Dawn had their hands up. They're members of the CALUC, and usually the members of the CALUC ask questions afterwards. So Ashley, if you would like to pose your question, please.
Thanks, Joanne. My question is for Kathy from TLC. Just wanted to ask regarding the heritage status, would that be provided by the city, and what would be the timelines to get that heritage status? Would it take a year, 6 months? And I have a follow-up question after that.
Yeah, Ashley, thanks. It'll be fairly quick. As I said, it had been done and we thought it was finished, but they registered it to the incorrect property. So we will be reviving that previous application and then having it re-registered onto 1964 Fairfield, which was where it was supposed to be. So it's a cleaning up of that. And as in tandem to that, they asked for our planning document, which we're going to provide to them to let them know what we're doing on site to keep that heritage flavor on site. I would say that would be fairly quick, but I haven't met with them recently to know what the timelines would be. I think that was the first question. Did you have another one?
Yeah, the other question is, would the board of TLC consider another density transfer in the future, or would this be the one and only?
This will be it. Arise is not taking all of the density, but they are paying us for all of the density. So this will be one project and it will remove all the excess density off of the site. So we'll do one only.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, that's it, Ashley. Dawn, are you still on the call?
Yes, I am. I had my hand up when we were talking about the neighborhood plan. I just want to clarify, but I think it's been clarified. I was on that committee for 2 years and then it was put on the table by the city when we presented it to them. So right now we're currently operating under the original neighborhood plan going back many, many, many years.
Okay, thank you. Dave didn't have any questions. I had a question. Sorry, I've got so many things going through my head as the chair here. Okay, so the question about the houses that are there. This was something that somebody else had asked at some point, and there was a question as to what was going to happen to the houses. Will they be one of those houses that's moved somewhere, or are they in line to be deconstructed, as the city has now required for anything like the houses that are going to be not houses anymore? Sorry, I'm not putting that well.
No, I think you nailed it. In terms of the existing houses, that was one of the first things we did. We looked at opportunities to pick up and relocate. As a company, we've done that on some other projects and had success. It's a real challenge on this one because of the hydro wires on the south side of Fairfield. So the feedback we got from the company that's got real expertise in this is that it's pretty unlikely, just because of the challenges of those wires and being able to take their structures safely off the site. So it would be more of a deconstruction exercise and looking at opportunities to reuse materials, get people in there early to see if the project's approved, where there's opportunities for reuse and recycling.
That's unfortunate. That is unfortunate with the hydro wires, and it's unfortunate that somebody can't figure out a way to get around that, working with, I don't know, City, BC Hydro, because they're good houses. But anyway, that's just me. The other question, so I'd written down from that when somebody asked to have the stats, the sheet of stats put up, and it said 32% adaptable units. And apologies if you already spoke to this. Like I said, I was juggling, so I missed a few things. Can somebody just reiterate what that means?
So basically, the adaptable is sufficiently planned in terms of clearances within rooms and maneuvering spaces that it could be by the changing of millwork and plumbing fixtures and so on in the future turned into a unit that somebody in a wheelchair could live in. So in the short term, immediately, it's sufficient that somebody who has mobility issues or is in a wheelchair can visit, let's say, right? That you're capable of being able to visit there.
Sorry to interrupt you, Greg. I get that part of it. Sorry, I didn't make myself clear. So they're adaptable if the owner wants them adapted.
Yes, yeah, that's right.
So you're not going into this saying that there are going to be you know, like there are other, I think with 902, Arise is doing a test, a design test on accessibility, which I know is not adaptable. So is there any room for that in this project for when you get down the road for a design test for accessibility of a percentage of numbers of units?
Yeah, I think the design test on 902 Fabo was slightly different because of the presence of steps. So we almost needed to just raise the bar to get to that point. The advantage of this building is that there's already advantages baked in with respect to being able to enter the lobby through the ramp and then get into the homes through the elevator. I think the question would more be around, and it's a good one, around kind of at day of sale, if approved, would there be some homes that are already fully made accessible when those things are put in place? And I guess that's if that request came in, then that's definitely something we could work with a homeowner on.
Okay, thank you. I would remind the people who are on this call to please be respectful. The chat is getting out of line. And if we were in a room and not doing this virtually, which I really hope we're doing maybe next month or the month after, and we will not have any more Zoom, you would not be able to have these conversations off the side of your chair. So please be respectful, or please get off the call. Thank you. Ashley, can we go back to you?
Thanks, Joanne. I just have a question for Rice. Since this density transfer is a new concept, just wondering what process is being considered by the City of Victoria around this. Are there any density transfer credits being considered, or is this being done more on an ad hoc basis because it's the first one? Just curious to know what process is being considered. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Ashley. The city sketched out a process when they first worked with TLC back in 2014 on how it could happen. So there'd be concurrent applications that would be considered by Mayor and Council at the same time. So that's the way that they allow both applications to be reviewed and considered, so that the density transfer and the downzoning of Adaptability Garden only happens when or if the 1733 project's approved.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I did have another question, but it's gone because I'm dealing with something else here. Sorry. So we've almost reached 9 o'clock. There's been a lot of interest. There's been a lot of comments. There have been a lot of questions. I'm very thankful to everybody who asked those and who answered those, attempted to answer those. And so this is not the end of this application, as you know. Please do go on to the the development tracker. It also has all the plans that you saw tonight, and you'll be able to look more closely and at your leisure, see what has been presented, because this was a very short 15-minute presentation with those plans. And please use the comment box. This is a lengthy process, as you've seen with all the other buildings that have been going on lately. So thanks to everybody. I would really like the CALUC members to stay on for a couple of minutes and respect the fact that the rest of you would probably like to finish your evening. And if you have any further questions of the CALUC and how the process works, please just send us an email. I'll be happy to get back to you. Thanks, everybody, very much.